Hi. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. How are we all doing? I have got the twinkly lights up. I can't remember if they were on last week or not, actually. But I've got twinkly lights up in lots of places now. We've started putting up Christmas bunting. We put our tree up this weekend. So it is definitely beginning to feel a lot like Christmas around here. When I say it's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas, the Christmas atmosphere, I actually haven't done any Christmas shopping or put really any thought at all into that side of it. I love the Christmas magic and the sparkle and the lights and all the like warm, cozy feelings. I love all that stuff. And I don't so much like or even remember the commercial side of it. And then I panicked last minute about not having presents, and it was a whole big thing last year. So I should probably put some thought into it for this year, shouldn't I? Anyway, that wasn't what I was intending to talk about. I just got distracted by the sparkly lights behind my head. So I actually didn't have anything I intended to talk about. What should I talk about today? Right, what's been going on the last week? So actually, what I will tell you about, because the most exciting thing I did this week was I got a new tattoo on my wrist. And when I hold it up to you like that, it looks really off-center. But when I look at it, it looks centered, just so you know. It's funny the way you rotate your wrist and how it shows up. But in fact, let me see if I can show you up close, if that will work. Oh, see, I can't turn my wrist the right way. So it is 3 different symbols. It's just not showing very well, is it? It looks way better than what it just looked like on there. But I got a tattoo this week that I am super excited about. It's been in my head for about 2 years now. So I was so excited I almost cried when she did it on Monday. Because it's super personal. It's super meaningful. And in this spot, like for the last few days, I got done Monday mornings for the last 2 days, I just I just notice it because it's right there. And every time I see it, it makes me smile. It makes me feel all lit up inside. Makes me feel super freaking powerful, which was the point of it. And I just love it enough. So I will tell you, because you guys who watch this always get the inside scoop on Life with Lindsey. That's the beauty of the first part of this, isn't it? So I'll tell you what it means. Now, my mom, when I told her about it, she was like, it's a bit woo-woo, Lindsey. And she's not wrong. It is a bit woo-woo. So just be prepared for that. But so what it is, the 3 symbols, they are, the whole thing together represents kind of the the hallmark that they stamp on precious metals. So whenever when there's stuff made with precious metals, so like silver, gold, platinum, palladium, something else, they have to stamp it to tell you all the information that you need to know about it, basically to give it authenticity, to make sure that it's not just some dodgy thing. So it has to get stamped at an assay office. And in the UK, there's only 4 assay offices that can authenticate these precious metals. So this is meant to look like a authentication mark for precious metals, but with a whole lot of creative license applied. So I have, this is absolutely not exactly what they look like, obviously. But the first in one of these hallmarks is the maker. So who made it? And I have done this so the first symbol is a crescent moon with sun rays coming out of it. So it represents the combination of the sun and the moon. Now, the sun is representative of the divine masculine energy, and the moon is representative of divine feminine energy. And combining these together, you get this sacred union of these energies. Now, the whole masculine feminine energy thing is a bit binary, and there's a lot more to it than that. But this represents the combination and the bringing together of all of these sacred energies. And so to me, that's the who made me was, I am made by this divine spirit. Now, I am not religious, and so I am not talking about a specific God or anything like that, but I do believe in these energies and some sort of greater something that we don't understand. So this kind of represents that, and it represents being made of light. So, the sun and the moon, obviously the moon's reflecting light rather than creating its own, but that's still very powerful. When we look up in the night sky, you can see by moonlight on a particularly bright moonlit night, can't you? So they both have their own light. They both have their own power and significance. So that's the first symbol. That symbol, I did not make that up. So that is on Instagram. There's an account called The Rising Woman, and this is the Rising Woman symbol. And her account is all about like conscious relationships and how to really, it's about intimacy and raising our best selves and men raising their best selves and this divine union of men and women. So, and I don't just mean men and women in relationships. I mean men and women and all of the non-binary as well. So her account is really awesome in terms of the inclusivity of relationships. So long-winded explanation for the first one, and you're probably all just nodding off entirely by now. The second symbol that I have is the Yorkshire Rose. So the second symbol in a hallmark of these precious metals is where it was made and where it was stamped for this authenticity. So like I said, there's 4 assay offices in the UK, and one of them is actually in Sheffield because Sheffield has its history in steelmaking and in metals. So this is the Yorkshire Rose, which is the symbol for the Sheffield office. And although I obviously am not a native Sheffielder, this whole tattoo kind of represents my phoenixing. So I really hate the term rebirth, but I'm going to stick with phoenixing. Of the all of the work that I have done on myself in the last few years, and that all happened here in Sheffield. So the Yorkshire Rose represents that. And then the final symbol is a 20 in a little house shape, and that's 2 things in one. So the first is the date, and again, obviously I'm not born in 2020, but my phoenixing happened in 2020, so that is the year. Obviously, there was lockdown, the world went to hell in a handbasket, but that's also the year that my marriage broke up and my husband and I split up, and I had, a newborn and a toddler and was suddenly single parenting in lockdown by myself, and it was a whole, world of mess. And so that is the year that all of this stuff started happening inside of me. And then the little house symbol that it's in that's representative of platinum, which is the strongest of the precious metals that get these stamps. So platinum is not the strongest metal of all. There's a much, much stronger, but it's the strongest of these metals. And I like it because it represents that I am made of strong stuff, but also I like that it's not the strongest of all metals. It can still get scratched and dented, and that's also true. I am really strong, but also still delicate and fragile and can still get hurt and scratched. And it's a nice reminder of how we get to be both. Strong does not mean immune to any hurt. Strong does not mean never crying, never getting hurt, never having triggers come up. Strong just means that you can withstand those. You can get through those. So I love that symbol represents both the strength and the fragility at the same time. So that is why I freaking love this tattoo, because it's a marker of a very, very poignant time in my life. It's a marker of how my world crumbled around me, and yet I was able to rise from the ashes. That's where the Lindsey Hall Rises came from, if you were wondering. So Lindsey Hall Rises came from rising from all this mess and creating a life that I really freaking love and am proud of, and I'm still doing that. That's going to be an ongoing thing. I'm obviously not done. There's still so much more I want to build and do, but really that year, so 2020, was the start of all of this. And although it was the most painful year of my life, it also was the foundation of so much beauty that just gets to keep growing and growing. And this is such a cool reminder of that. So that is what my main thing is in this past week, is getting this and then staring at it all the time and being like, oh, it looks so great. And also, if you are local to Sheffield, Adele Rag did it for me. She's in Walkley. You can find her on Instagram at Adele Rag Tattoos. She was really awesome at her job. She was super professional. She was super warm and welcoming and lovely. And I can't recommend her enough. So Adele Rag Tattoos, check her out if you're interested. Right. Okay. So I'm going to move on to Q&A. I also, by the way, because I have this, I can't wear my watch. So I have no idea how long I've been talking for or how long this is going to last today. Lucky you guys. So Q&A. I've got two questions for you today. The first one is about, I think the question was worded as, what's my general opinion about misogyny and workplace harassment, and how do you combat that? So you won't be surprised to know my general opinion is it's bullshit. Misogyny and workplace harassment is just straight up utter bullshit. It should not be happening. It should never have happened. It sure as hell shouldn't be happening now. Just no. I don't think that was probably the question, because you probably already knew I was going to say that. So workplace harassment, like sexual harassment and misogyny, is all definitely a symptom of the patriarchy, and this belief that men and their traits are somehow better and more powerful and more important than women, and that putting women in their place and keeping them small and quiet and out of the way is the safest option for everyone. Now, I really believe that patriarchy has its roots in people being afraid of women's power. So women are incredibly, insanely powerful beings. I mean, we literally bring life into this world. Like, we grow and bring life into the world. And beyond that, we just have insane power. And I believe that patriarchy comes from people being afraid of their power and going, because people who are in power want to keep their power. And so I'm talking like way, way, way back. Like, this isn't something that like just one day was decided upon 20 years ago or whatever. This has been slowly built into our system and culture for generations and generations, like hundreds of years. Off on a patriarchy tangent here. So all of these things then are meant to keep women small, because if we are busy worrying about these other things, if we don't believe in our own power, if we don't believe in what we can do, if we believe that other people matter more than us, that other people are more important than us, then we won't actually take ownership of our power, and we won't try and change the things that are in place to benefit other people. And those people who are benefiting from it will get to stay in power then. And that is ultimately what people in positions of power generally want, is to stay there. So bringing all this back to the workplace, I have zero tolerance for it. And my general approach, now I'm aware that I've always been a bit, I can't even say like a ballsy American, because I did this even when I was in America, not everybody around me did. But I've always been the type to call stuff out. And so in particular, if there's stuff going on at the workplace, so I had, how do I tell this story without giving away too much? So I did have an issue at one of my previous jobs where I thought that somebody more senior than I was discriminating against me based on my gender and other factors relating to my gender. So I thought, and it wasn't just a one-off, it had gone on for quite some time, and I felt like I was missing out on work opportunities, and that I was, just generally, it wasn't overt, so nobody ever said anything directly, like, it wasn't, sexual putting me down, like sexual harassment, and it wasn't overt discrimination, but all of these little things built up over time, and I very much felt like I was being discriminated against based on the fact that I was a woman, and that the men in similar positions were getting more opportunities, etc. And so I decided to have the conversation with this person more senior than I was. And I was scared shitless, to be totally honest. I talked to my immediate boss about it first. And they and they recommended I not have this conversation because they said this could totally ruin your working relationship. It could make it untenable. If you have this conversation, it basically could ruin your working relationship. And although I support you in what you're saying, I think that having this conversation could be quite dangerous to your career. And I just thought about it for not long, 10 minutes, and decided that was definitely a risk I was willing to take, because I couldn't go on in this, and this wasn't okay. And even if it ruined my working relationship with this person, it was something that I was willing to do. And if I had to leave the company as a result of it because it wasn't workable, then so be it. But it would at least, I needed to make my point. I needed to know that I said what I needed to say. And I knew that this person was a fairly introspective person and that he would at least take it on board. And maybe, even if it made it super too awkward for us to work together, he would consider it and his behaviors when employing other senior women behind me, after me. And so to me, it was a risk worth taking. So I wrote it all out, everything I wanted to say, made all of my points. And then I scheduled a meeting with him and I read it to him, which felt a bit uncomfortable, but it was such an emotional subject for me that there was no way I trusted myself at that point to just say what I wanted to say. So I told him, I have something really important to talk to you about, and I'm going to read this to you. And I sat and read it to him, and he was upset, and he was pretty horrified that was the what had been happening to me, and that was my impression of it. He, of course, thought that wasn't the case at all. He thought that none of that was true, and he hadn't been doing that, and yada, yada, yada. And I left, so that I did that on a Friday, and I left that Friday thinking, I have no idea what's going to come of that, but I felt so much peace inside of me for the fact that I brought it up, that I had the conversation. And like I said, knowing that if I ultimately had to leave that job as a result of it, I could stand by that, because I could stand by being really proud of how I handled the situation. As it turned out, I didn't need to leave. It didn't ruin our working relationship. He called me in the next week, and he had talked to his family about it over the weekend, and he'd heard my points, and he was really glad I raised them, and it actually ended up really strengthening our working relationship. But even if that wasn't, so it turned out amazingly, but even if it wasn't the outcome, I still stand by my approach to it of, I'm going to call this out because it's not appropriate. You shouldn't be doing it to me, and you shouldn't be doing it to anybody else. And a lot of the times, like I said, none of this was overt stuff. A lot of this was small, little, easy for people to brush off, easy for men to brush off and go, oh, I didn't mean it that way. And stand alone, none of them were big things. But it was the bigger picture all putting it together where it was hang on, this is not okay. Now, obviously, if your situation is different and it is overt stuff, then that just adds even more weight to calling it out. But I think that this all comes down to really believing that you are worth not being treated this way, that you get to own your own power here and go, hang on, I'm not going to put up with whatever it is that's happening here. I don't deserve to be treated like this at all. I don't deserve to be treated like this as a human. Oh, hi, Joe. Morning. So you don't get to be treated like that in the workplace or in general, and calling it out in whatever way feels most comfortable for you. It might also help to have HR involved. So I should say that before I sat down to have this conversation, I did talk to the HR department as well. So they knew that I was going to have this conversation, and they just were able to give me a little bit of emotional support behind it. But I strongly advocate calling this shiz out and saying, no, not okay. And the way I did it, it wasn't super confrontational. It wasn't meant to be incendiary. It was just meant to say, I need to bring this to your attention that this isn't okay, and going from there, because that's what the patriarchy doesn't want us to do. They want us to stay small and stay in our little box and not cause trouble, and that's not okay with me. I'm here to burn the patriarchy down and call this stuff out. So that is question number one, and I hope that helps. Question number 2 is also a workplace related question today. So interesting when I get similar topics from different people. Question number 2 is about how do you handle it when you have a huge workload? And specifically, when I had this massive work deadline a few months ago, what was the biggest support to me in that? And it's a very good question. I think the biggest support for me was, and so I had this same massive work deadline every year for 7 years. So it was an annual project, and to be honest, it got worse and worse as the years went on in terms of the amount of pressure we were under and the amount that we had to produce. But the biggest thing to me was about, well, it would have been in 2020, would have been the first year. So for the last 3 years, I approached it ever so slightly differently in that I really focused on looking after my own well-being at the same time as doing this big deadline. So this, if you were watching these tea break chats throughout that like July through September time, I talked about it a lot, about how much work I had to do. And, during that time, I don't get enough sleep, and I, spend every waking hour doing it. But it wasn't every waking hour, because I made sure that I had still time out for me. I took the breaks when I needed them. I would, yes, it took over a lot of my life, but I really focused on making sure it didn't actually suck every bit of life out of me like it had in previous years, because that just turned me into a shell of a person. So the biggest support for me, I guess, was knowing that even though this project was very, very important and it meant a lot to me to deliver really well and really high quality, and I poured a lot into it, but remembering that at the end of the day, I was worth more than this project. My worth was not tied to the output of this project. It was not tied to the quality of the delivery of it. Who I am as a human is independent of that and matters more. And it sounds possibly a bit ridiculous to have to say that, but I think in previous years I put the project above myself, above my relationship, above everything else. I put this project first of, I will do whatever it takes to get this done and to get it done to the top quality. None of us at my job sacrifice on quality in the slightest. We were not okay with like, oh, it's good enough. Good enough is not good enough. It had to be the best we could get it. And I put that above everything else. Whereas in the recent years, when I made this switch, I still didn't want it to be just good enough. I still wanted it to be like really awesome, but I would constantly remind myself that, but I matter more, and my worth as a human is not tied to this project. And so sometimes that meant, going to bed at 11 instead of 2 a.m. because those extra 3 hours weren't going to get me enough extra work that my sleep didn't matter more. Or I still took my Wednesdays sometimes. I didn't usually take my full Wednesdays off, but I would take out the time to do these and to do some coaching work, and that mattered more. So whatever it is, wherever you can find ways to still make room for you and your needs still come first, even if there needs to be a bit of a trade-off and a bit of a sacrifice, but in the grand scheme of things, remembering that your work comes first. That's kind of the big deadline piece. And then the how do you manage the big workload? Similar. It's reminding yourself that you can only do what you can do. There are the work list, to-do list. If your job is anything like every job I've ever worked and most of the corporate jobs I've ever heard of, the to-do list is endless. In the same way that the housework, the to-do list is endless. You will never ever get it all done. So accepting that rather than fighting against that can make a huge difference. And it's about prioritizing. It's about doing the most important ones. It's about, but just working through it in a way that says, I will do the best I can. I will do what I can do, but I'm a human. And at the end of the day, my individual resources are limited. My time is limited. My energy is limited. And that's okay, and accepting that. Don't know if that was helpful, but hopefully it was. Let me know if you want to talk through that anymore. And as always, if anybody else watching this has comments, definitely, chime in the comments. We can keep the conversation going in there. I would always love it if people are watching and I'd be like, oh, I have some experience with that and I want to chime in about that, or I have a follow-up question to that, or, offering each other advice based on what I've said. Like, all of that is totally, totally welcome here. So use the comments and let's start the conversation. And of course, if any of this is stuff that you want to talk about and go into more detail in private, then let me know and we can talk about the one-to-one coaching. So I will wrap up. Today's job is to try and get the videos for the Divorcee program up on my website. I've made all the videos. As of this morning, my computer had stopped playing the videos, but I fixed it now because I'm an IT guru / Google helped, obviously. So I'm going to try and get those up, and I want to get this link out to you guys as soon as possible because honestly, this is the work that has been like burning in me for so long now, and I'm so excited to get it out there. So that's today's job. So stay tuned for a new website coming soon, for the Divorcee offers coming soon. There's going to be 3 levels of support available. There will still be regular one-to-one coaching available as well. So it's not just that you have to be purchasing the Divorcee program to work with me. You'll still be able to work with me one-to-one as well. And when I do come out with this though, I would so greatly appreciate it if you can share the link far and wide, share it on your stories, post it on your Facebook, post it, send it to all of your friends, do all your WhatsApp groups, just anything that you guys can do to help me share this and get this out there, the Divorcee program, I would be so eternally grateful to you for, because that is the way that this is really super helpful resources for people, and that's going to be the way that we spread it so that the right people can hear it. So yeah, when I come out with this link imminently, the more you can help share it, the more grateful I would be. Okay, that's it. I'm going to go get to work on this website and try and get it up and live for you. All right. Love you all. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.